I think we're in an interesting time now, 5 years down the road. We think about taking a little bit of a breather, think carefully about how we can take advantage of our successes this far, but most important, build on them and make sure how we continue to be useful for the central banking community. So we have the vision that we want to improve the financial inclusion in the world, to make financial services easier to access for more people, make services more quicker in delivery, make them cheaper, easier to use, all of that. But at the same time, the public sector and everyone, all in our society, need to combat financial crimes. And we also want sensitive information to be protected. So we try to achieve many things at the same time. And we want to spend more time in the hub trying to suggest solutions balancing these needs. I am Cecilia Skingsley, and I am the head of the BIS Innovation Hub.
And I'm Louise Egan, speaking from Basel. You're listening to BISness, the podcast from the Bank for International Settlements. Today's episode is all about the BIS Innovation Hub. The Innovation Hub was established in 2019 with the goal of fostering international collaboration on innovation and financial technology in the central banking community. It works to identify and analyze critical trends in financial technology that are relevant to central banks. But it also actively participates in developing solutions in areas like payments, cybersecurity, or financial supervision. It does this by experimenting and publishing the findings of these experiments. And finally, the Hub acts as a focal point for a network of central bank experts on innovation. So 5 years into the life of the Hub seems like a good time to reflect on the experiences and the insights gained so far, and to think about what comes next. There's no better person to discuss this with than Cecilia Skingsley, the head of the BIS Innovation Hub. Cecilia hails from Sweden, where she was previously the first deputy governor of the Swedish Central Bank. And fun fact, her very distinguished career began as a radio journalist in Stockholm. So yet another good reason to have you on the podcast, Cecilia. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Cecilia, you've just announced the Innovation Hub's work program for 2025-2026. But before we get into that, could you just talk a little bit about the first 5 years of the Hub and what they've been like? What's happened so far, and where do you find yourselves today?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, yes, we have been operating for a little more than 5 years. And 5 years down the road, we now have a little more than 100 members of staff that are working across 7 centers. We have published findings from more than 30 projects, and we have currently about 24 projects going. And doing financial technological innovation on a global level, operating it as a partnership between, on one hand, BIS, and on the other hand, our many great host central banks. And that is sort of a complex operation. So I would really like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude for all the words of support and recognition we receive from the community of central banks, from many members of the staff in the central banks, all the way up to many governors. The early years that we have been doing this felt very much like a startup. There was a sense that there was a lot to do. There was a lot we could do. We were opening up the centers. Work has been and is very exciting, a rapid expansion. We wanted to learn from the best. We wanted to apply the best innovative working methodologies, but at the same time, we also needed to put in the necessary structures to turn this into a real workplace. And we have the instructions to work with a broad set of topics, and let me just mention them. We are working within areas such as central bank digital currencies, the next generation financial market infrastructures, and this include payment systems, for example. We can work and explore within supervisory and regulatory and monetary policy technology. We can do exploration within green finance and open finance, and also within cybersecurity. And I think we have gathered and also distributed across the central banking community a lot of knowledge of what novel tech can do for central banks and also the financial system at large. So I think we're in an interesting time now, 5 years down the road. We think about taking a little bit of a breather, think carefully about how we can take advantage of our successes this far, but most important, build on them and make sure how we continue to be useful for the central banking community.
It sounds like a very busy 5 years. What do you see as the next steps now? What do they look like?
So a priority, we've done different kinds of projects, and now it's a priority is to integrating findings from them to see, identify what we could do next. So to say, we exist basically to support the central banking community to navigate the tech landscape. And one way to think about what we do is to think about what central banks do. So they are responsible for conducting monetary policy. They are typically also involved in the payment infrastructure. They're responsible for ensuring financial stability, and many, almost most central banks also have a very active role in regulation and supervision. And the Innovation Hub has actually done experiments and reached new findings in all these areas. And now going forward, we hope to do a bit more of connections between these findings more systematically to see what could be not only new knowledge, but also try to see more what could be handed over to the central banking community as possibly useful tools as they move forward in their work and their operations.
Could you give an example of this kind of connection between projects?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is one tangible example that I'm excited about, and that is about how we, through tech experiments, can contribute to safeguarding the integrity of the financial system. Now, that sounds a bit strange, so maybe I should exactly explain what I mean. So the integrity of the financial system is really about balancing a number of tricky issues. So we have the vision that we want to improve the financial inclusion in the world, to make financial services easier to access for more people, make services more quicker in delivery, make them cheaper, easier to use, all of that. But at the same time, the public sector and everyone, all in our society, need to combat financial crimes, and we also want sensitive information to be protected. So we try to achieve many things at the same time, and we want to spend more time in the hub trying to suggest solutions balancing these needs. And let me mention 4 projects that are already working closely together in this field and making progress also by themselves. And these 4 are Mandala, they're called Hertha, Aurora, and Raven.
Could you tell me a little bit more about those 4 projects? How do they contribute to this concept of financial integrity that you speak about?
So there's more information about our webpage, but let me just briefly talk you through the 4. So Mandala is about a solution that can automate compliance procedures for cross-border financial transactions. This could be about compliance with anti-money laundering, for example. We know that there is a lot of work that could be improved, automated in this field, and we think that we may have a solution that can be put into place. Hertha is about identifying financial crime while still protecting people's privacy. And here we think we have an innovative approach that could prove more effective than conventional methods in this field. Project Aurora focuses on combating money laundering. Again, we're using innovative methods there that takes a more holistic network view of payments data, and we've seen some promising results in the first phase of Aurora. And last but not least, Raven use artificial intelligence tools to help assess cybersecurity readiness of the financial systems. I think there's a lot of potential here to provide central banks with tools that will have a meaningful impact on the work they're already doing, and more to follow, I think, in these 4 projects in the years to come.
So financial integrity is clearly a big area of focus. What about monetary policy itself, which is, of course, at the very core of what central banks do? What role can technology play there? And are there things that come to mind, like accessing more data, automating some analytical tasks, perhaps? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, so to make the best possible monetary policy decisions, central banks really need to follow and understand what's going on in the economics to the best of their ability. And here, I would really like to emphasize that the staff in the central bank departments working with this, they have been early adopters of new technologies for a very long time. For example, they've been using different machine learning techniques for statistics and macroeconomic analysis. So from the Innovation Hub perspective, we have to think very carefully what we can bring to that development. But for example, anyone who works in economic forecasting knows that official statistics such as GDP and inflation typically come with a delay, and this can make policy decisions more difficult for central banks. So one of our projects called NEO, it brings together central bank economists with central bank data scientists to tackle this problem. And it uses machine learning and predictive modeling to explore new and more frequent data sources. And here we're looking at things like air transport, road traffic, cargo transport, retail purchases, and other kinds of data. And we think that these unique data set, combining them with traditional economic indicators, such as GDP and inflation, can give central banks a more detailed picture of what is going on in the economy right here and right now, and that these insights will ultimately help them when it comes to deciding whether or not to change policy interest rates.
So there's one other area I'd like to ask you about, which relates to the rise of crypto assets and their potential impact on the stability of the financial system. Can you talk a little bit about the Hub's work in that area?
Yes, the central banks really, as you said, need visibility into the crypto ecosystem so they can monitor developments. And I have two interesting projects, and we have two interesting projects in this field. First one is Project Atlas. It has developed a proof of concept that helps to assess how economically significant flows in crypto assets like Bitcoin are globally. And in the first phase, it focused on the international flows of crypto assets. And the result so far is a data platform that central banks and regulators are intended to be used by them to get better understanding of the size and the development in the crypto industry. The other project I'm thinking about here is Project Pixtrial. It's looking at stable coins, which can be seen as a subset in the crypto world. In particularly, Pixtrial has developed a solution for monitoring the assets that underlie stable coins, which is key to ensuring that their balance sheets are healthy. And the project developed a prototype that can provide supervisors with almost real-time data about stablecoin liabilities and the assets that back them.
And in your work program, are there any new projects to be launched?
Yes, so we bring two new projects to our portfolio, and both are exploring the possibilities in artificial intelligence. The first project is actually a continuation of a project that already exists. It's called Gaia. It's in the area of green finance. Central banks, we know, need to be able to track the economic and financial implications of the climate change, and we hope Gaia could be helpful for banks in that field. Gaia is about extracting data from unstructured data sources, like what you can find on web pages and in PDF documents. We're using the climate-related analysis as a use case in Project Gaia, but we have also identified that this tool that we are developing can be applied to other areas as well. We think that the first phase of Gaia was very successful. So now in next phase, we want to update the architecture further and also look at possible ways for the central banking community to operate this solution. The second new project we bring forward is also exploring AI. And this is about helping financial supervisors with an AI-based toolkit. Around the world, we can see that the workload for financial supervisors keep increasing. It's getting more difficult and complex. And in most cases, resources to do the increasing job load is not growing at the same rate. So here we aim to create what we call an artificial intelligence supervisor enhancer, or AISE for short. And with Project AISE, we hope that somewhere down the line, we can provide supervisors in different parts of the world who choose to use it, get useful support that can make them more efficient. This is about automating key tasks, do things like document evaluation, summaries, background checks, and lots more.
You mentioned earlier the possibility of handing over projects to the central banking community for them to implement the solutions that the Hub has developed. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. And absolutely, you're right. Our mandate is to identify critical trends in the financial technology, and doing these experiments in the project is part of how we deliver that mandate. But we also have a mandate to, when we see merits in it, develop possibly public goods in the technological space. Here we are demand-driven. We try to identify needs that we think central banks have, either for their own work and operations or for the financial ecosystem more broadly. And most of the things we do is about experimenting and learning from them experiments, and they will not go to any sort of real-life setting. But some of the projects down the line may actually go to a real-life setting. But that's not for us to decide or for us to operate. That is something for the central banks who we serve to decide on. But let me give you some examples. One recent example is Project Nexus. So Nexus was developed in the Singapore Center. It's about connecting fast payment systems from different countries. And this we are now working on to hand over to a group of central banks who plan to take Nexus further. Another example is Project Enbridge. That's also about connecting payments cross-border, but that's using another kinds of technology. And that is also being handed over to another group of central banks. And looking forward, we think we have some further interesting things, tools that could be useful, but it does require that one or a group of central banks take them from us and develop them further. And I would also like to point out that this kind of interaction that the Innovation Hub staff work with central bank staff is also within our mandate, which is to basically serve as a focal point for collaboration and innovation across central banks.
That's all we have time for today. I want to thank you very much, Cecilia, for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks, Louise. It's been a pleasure.
You can find more information about the Innovation Hub and its new work program on our website at BIS.org. And you can also subscribe to the BISness podcast on iTunes and Spotify, and follow the BIS on X, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram.